Production funding for Behind the Headlines is made possible in part by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
The future of early childhood education in Memphis, tonight on Behind the Headlines. I'm Eric Barnes with the Daily Memphian. Thanks for joining us. I am joined tonight by Rob Hughes, VP of Development from Porter Leith. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited.
Along with Deja Henry, who covers education and related issues for the Daily Memphian. Deja, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So Rob, the news of the day for Porter Leith and the news of early childhood education in Memphis and Shelby County, I should say, is that SCS, Shelby County Schools, surprisingly to you all, I think would be the fair reaction, ended its contract with you all for Head Start, the federal program for, I'll let you define the kids who are in there. If you would, for people not as close to it as we are, the Head Start program serves what kids and how many, and then we'll get into where things are going from here now that the contract was ended.
Sure. So the Head Start contract for Shelby County actually serves 3,200 children ages 3 to 5 years old in the county. Largely, it is needs-based, so largely low income, but also disadvantaged families.
And you all had that contract through SCS for 7 years?
Right, for the last 7 years. And we've been a Head Start operator well before that under the old Head Start grantees across the city through time. And then in 2014, SCS was awarded the contract or the grant from HHS, and we became the sole contractor at that point 7 years ago for all 3,200 children.
You also serve other kids through other programs and so on. So total number of kids that you serve.
Sure. So Porter Leith as a whole, across all 6 of our programs, whether that's Books from Birth or Cornerstone or Home Visitation Program, serves over 45,000 children a year. In total, though, our preschool program serves 6,500 children a year.
So give or take, 3,200 of them are moving
our
into
Head
the
Start, right.
Our Head Start, going into the SCS system.
Right.
I should say to everyone that we'll have Joris Ray, superintendent at Shelby County Schools, and some of his staff on the show in 2 weeks to talk about the other side of this. This was before I go to Deja. You all were not happy that you lost this. You were surprised that you lost this contract.
Surprised.
What went down, and why did you think you should get that contract renewed?
Let me answer your second question first. Based on performance for the last 7 years, as well as our performance before that, the shared partnership that we had with SCS really elevating early childhood quality across the city, put Memphis on the national map for early childhood and the system that was being built here across all the partnerships and the quality enhancements that were happening in the centers. So we definitely stand and run on our record from that standpoint as far as the program outcomes go. I think the big surprise for us is just the timing of it all. Our contract ended on June 30th. Shelby County Schools had put out RFPs as early as February. We'd applied to that. It was canceled. Applied to another one. It was canceled. And then directly engaged with the superintendent and his team in early May to talk about a contract renewal. And then in early June, surprisingly found out that a few hours later, it would be announced that Shelby County Schools was pulling off Head Start back in-house. So just the timing was really confusing and surprising considering we were still in negotiations with SCS at that time, under our understanding.
Yeah, let me bring in Deja.
And yes, Rob, when I spoke to you the day that this all happened, you were quite obviously frazzled. Could you, reflecting back on that now that some time has passed, was there any indication that, as SCS said, that those negotiations were failing?
Just the ongoing dialogue over the last really weeks leading up to this point, I think added to that confused and just surprising state that I mentioned a minute ago, and that our team had spent countless hours, long nights, even text at 10, 11 o'clock at night with SCS trying to negotiate through these finer points of the contract renewal, only to hear third hand really through a Head Start association call statewide that SCS was going to be bringing this back in-house. Really was just confusing on the timing of it all. As far as the implications and leaning in on that, I don't think there are any major warning signs just because of that ongoing dialogue for really 6 weeks leading up to that.
The SCS said in a statement, I think I'm quoting from your story, Deja, that Porterleaf and the organization requested, quote, a substantial increase in funding to provide fewer services to pre-K students at a higher cost. That could have jeopardized the SCS Head Start grant by putting the district out of compliance with federal requirements. That sounds serious. Is that true?
No.
So there was no increase, no substantial increase that you all requested. Any increase that you requested in funding?
So we would have requested an increase in funding with the compliance issue that was brought up there. Really getting off into details, SCS is the grantee with HHS, with Health and Human Services at the federal level. We were a contractor, not a delegate agency with that, and we're getting into some semantics with federal contracting, all of that. But because of the partnership that started in 2014, we were the largest contractor of Head Start in the country. It's the largest relationship like this anywhere in the U.S. It's abnormal, for lack of a better term. To bring that into compliance in the eyes of HHS, we were a delegate, not a contractor. Again, trying to explain all that would be here for days, going through that. So to bring us into better compliance and making us a delegate would have required SCS to pay those indirect cost rates that have been in your story, I know, and several others in the last few weeks. So to bring that up would have required more funding. So to bring that all back around in negotiations with that rate to keep that compliant, we would have had to have cut classroom staff, probably 50 positions, indirect services staff, to keep that overall number the same. It's complicated
50
math.
out of, that's okay. I mean, we have 25 minutes. People, it's behind the headlines. We get a little wonky here, but you cutting 50 out of how many staff?
Over 250.
250 staff.
And those are direct family child serving staff, which would you can imagine, diminish our quality, and that's something that we're not going to do. Okay. We're very clear about that.
And again, before I go back to Deja, one more. The compliance issue was, I didn't get
it. It was around the contractual structure, and that we were being treated as a delegate and not a contractor. So a contractor, for example, would take over one small piece of Head Start in this example. So they might provide custodial or janitorial services for the program. As a delegate, since we were operating that entire program, we were really a delegate. The point of the program had been delegated to Porterleaf in a large fashion by SCS, and that's okay. We just have to be treated as a delegate, not a contractor. So that's where.
But the compliance issues were not safety, were not. I mean, that's the thing. And I apologize not to beat up on this, but because if someone hears compliance issues and little kids, the worst thoughts go to there was a safety issue, there was a health issue, there was an outcome issue.
No, this is a procedural, contractual compliance issue on that front.
Yeah, let me go back to Deja here.
So you mentioned that you would have to ask for more to keep that compliance issue at hand. With that, if you look at the contracts over the past 7 years, you see that there is a gap of what SCS is funding for Porterleaf and what you said was the true cost of those services. So what was Porterleaf doing to accommodate that gap?
I'm glad you brought that up. So we were raising private dollars to make that contract work. So our true cost of the program and what our proposal would have been this year, and was our proposal this year, was $18.2 million. That is the true cost. It's a reimbursement grant from SCS. It's reimbursed through HHS. The Head Start contract has increased the Head Start grant to SCS has increased from HHS from $20 million in 2014 up to $25.6 million in 2021. Going back, Porterleaf's contract has gone from $16.9 million to $16 million during that time, so you can see the different gaps there. Our true cost has gone up. Costs for everybody go up over 7 years. If you think back on your own personal life, I doubt you're paying less for anything now than you were 7 years ago. Costs have gone up, and to have quality, we have to operate the program this way. So our true cost was $18.2 million to operate that program. We would not cut quality to meet the budget.
With 15 minutes left here. So it is done, right? The contract is over as of the 30th.
Yes.
What happens to I think you said 250 direct staff? Are they out of a job? Or
so luckily we were able to retain a lot of our talent. So we're really excited to move forward operating Porterleaf Preschool. We're following the exact same Head Start model that we've used since 2001 when we opened our first Head Start services. So we're operating preschool across the county in our 5 centers. Enrollment so far in less than 30 days, we're really excited. The interest has been there. We're well on our way to filling up our centers. So families know where their child will go at the start of the school year on August 9th.
And who is paying for that without the Head Start money?
Without the Head Start money, we're able to utilize Tennessee Department of Human Services child care vouchers, as well as a pay structure for families.
Okay. So some families are choosing to pay. It basically is what that's coming down to.
If families are not needs-based, it's certainly open to the public. And if families are willing to pay, we're absolutely willing to have them and would love to have them. It's a quality program.
Yeah, you all have built out your infrastructure. I should say, I mean, Porterleith, as we said at the top, does a lot of things other than Head Start. You've been around for...
Since 1850.
1850, give or take.
I wasn't here when we were founded on that front, but no, I'm glad you mentioned the infrastructure piece. We've really invested in that, and I think that's one great piece with the partnership that we had with SES is we were able to bring millions and millions of private funding to the community and to this partnership. Building 2 new centers right now. They're open. A third one should be open later this year, and a fourth one to come. But great academies. I know y'all have been there to see those just amazing facilities and really, again, putting Memphis on the national map. We know the program's not just about great buildings, it's about great quality. So we were able to bring private funding in from a number of different sources to invest in the quality of the program, whether that's LENA, which really focuses heavily on literacy work and literacy skill development for children.
LENA is the name of the program.
LENA, out of Boulder, Colorado,
Okay.
as well as national partners like Sesame Street and Communities, helping focus on social and emotional development. A number of other programs, our Innovative Teacher Excellence program. Our instructional coaches are going through Harvard Graduate School of Education right now, earning their certificate in early education leadership. Just phenomenal investments, really, that go straight to the heart of making sure that children have a great early childhood experience.
Let me bring Deja back in.
And then what do you think this impact will be for the families that are that were attending Porterleith facilities through SCS?
The impact, if they continue with Porterleith, we know it'll be great. We've set it up to where they will not miss a beat with us. They'll be ready to go on August 9th for the new school year. Largely the same facilities they were in last year. If they were in one of our facilities going forward, hopefully the same teachers, same staff, everything continues on. I think coming on the heels of a pandemic where children learn virtually for a large point in the school year, or part of the school year, I think it's really important that families are able to have that great quality option. The last thing we want is we know there's going to be a COVID gap with every child across the board, whether it's K-12, pre-K, college, any of those. But coming back into the new school year, Porterleith is here to make sure that families do not miss a beat with us.
And how much the state put in some, and forgive me as I kind of ramble out loud here, the state passed a number of requirements in the session that ended this spring, holding back third graders if they weren't, I think second or third graders if they weren't ready to move on. There's a lot of funding for summer school to kind of make up for lost opportunities. Do you all play a role in either of those new programs?
Not in K-12. For us, we're really locked in on that preschool piece, but we know that kindergarten readiness directly influences third grade reading scores. And again, going back to the partnership, that was one great thing that we were able to do together with SCS is enhance kindergarten readiness outcomes up to 70 to 80% consistently over the course of the 7-year partnership, which really primes that pump for third grade reading scores for the district.
Right, and for people joining us late, I should again mention that Superintendent Joris Ray from Shelby County Schools and some of his staff will be on the show in a couple weeks to talk about the Head Start program pre-K, but also some of these other, it was a very difficult year to say the least for education, so that will be in 2 weeks. One more question before I go back to Deja. You mentioned 70 to 80% being ready for kindergarten. I think you also said, this was the largest Head Start program in the country, outsourced.
Right, outsourced, yeah.
Outsourced. What are the typical numbers for Head Start nationally?
It differs by county. It's determined by the number of eligible families and needs of each community there. Typically what you see is a number of small contractual relationships. So out of 3,200 children, you might see 5 or 6, or maybe even 10 providers.
I asked my question poorly. That was interesting, and I appreciate you saying that. I asked the outcomes of around 79%, 80% that you all have. What do other Head Start programs in other parts of the country typically see? Sorry for not.
Every Head Start group has their own outcome. They can choose their own testing, and there's not a lot of correlation between different testing models. So I would have to go find somebody else that uses the same one, and I don't know that off the top of my head. I will say that Porterleith has also used Brigance as another metric for us, so we're able to show domain growth across each core area for whole child development, and that is nationally normed, and we could compare that nationally.
Okay. Deja.
And then just to reiterate, so this was a big contract, and you mentioned that that enrollment interest is there for Porter-Leith. What other impacts do you see? Are there any added costs that will come from not having this contract?
There are certainly some challenges starting up preschool so quickly. It's been less than 30 days at this point to get up and running. So there's some startup costs there, but largely we have a great model that we know that works, and we're able to get families enrolled. So it should be a short-term bump and not a long-term impact for us.
Look, one last thing on this, and I know you all do other things, but I did want to read this statement from Mike War, as chairman of Porter-Leith's Early Childhood Foundation, and again, reading from Deja's story. He said the relationship with SCS began to deteriorate 2 years ago, and I'm quoting Mike War. Apparently, the new leadership did not like innovation very much. They certainly didn't care for transparency. By and large, what happened was the innovation we were doing sort of ground to a halt. Our staff was totally miserable. That's pretty harsh. And what was the innovation that you were trying to do, and that now, in a different circumstance, apparently you are free to pursue? So talk about some of that innovation. And again, I don't mean to put you into the tit for tat with SCS, sure, but I do think that notion of innovation, everyone nationally, it's been a huge focus locally on early childhood education. That's where we start. I mean, Mayor Strickland ran on it, the Chamber of Commerce put a huge, there's just been so much talk about early childhood education over the last 10 years. It seemed like we finally got there, and this is a strange bump in the road, but talk about innovation and what you all will pursue going forward.
And I'm glad you phrased it just like that. This is a bump in the road. It's not the end of the road for Porter-Leith. We're able to continue on with our innovations. I mentioned our Teacher Excellence program a little bit. We're able to provide performance-based coaching and practice-based coaching for all of our early childhood educators in the classroom to really enhance professional development opportunities from a teaching practice standpoint for all of our educators. That was something that we really started in partnership with SCS, but also had opened it up to any early childhood educator across Memphis and Shelby County. So being able to continue that forward, being able to continue our work with Lena, I think I mentioned some of our social emotional development, really focusing on that comprehensive child development. So not just the academic piece that happens in the classroom, but those family services that happen as well. So making sure that families are supported as well as the child's health, disability, and nutrition needs throughout the standpoint of our work.
That is important too, and I mean, because all the shows we've done on education and over the years, and the various groups who work with early childhood, I mean, the thing that in the story, the articles we've written and so on, the thing that becomes clear is, and Dorsey Hobson, previous SCS superintendent, who I often quote him saying as he was leaving, talking about the challenges they have with so many kids within Shelby County schools, that the children are coming to school having not had dinner, walking to school, getting there late, wet, cold, not having books, and not having finished their homework, and that they are starting the day so far behind. And he was talking more about, elementary and above. Sure. The wraparound services you all do, I mean, they can include, talk about the scope of services that you're trying to provide to kids, and I think also to their families, that get beyond the academics. Sure. And then I'll go back to Deja.
I mentioned we're going to continue to follow our Head Start model that we've operated for 20 years, and we continue to operate early Head Start, so our work there is not affected by this, two completely separate items. But for example, in the first 45 school days, every child goes through an on-site physical, dental exam, hearing and speech assessment, an eye exam, all on-site, and we're able to help connect families with additional resources if they're needed on that front. We provide breakfast, lunch, and snack, all USDA approved in our centers, making sure that children have those nutritional core elements that they need each and every day. So those wraparound services for children are fantastic, but it's also for the families. We know that we can't just do great school. We can't just work with families. We have to follow that two-gen model their two-generation model that's so important. It's been proven time and time again to be effective. So working with all of our families to help them achieve whatever their dream may be. So does that mean helping families complete education or job certification, finding better employment, finding better housing, any of those things? How can we help those families really advance their family forward? Really excited to be able to continue that, as I mentioned. And you mentioned Superintendent Hobson had shared those concerns before, and focusing on that. It's actually how we got started, expanding outside of early Head Start and Head Start years ago with pre-K. A number of charter providers all face the same element of having to overcome those overall needs before they can focus on learning. So we started doing pre-K for 4-year-olds. I believe it was 2012 or 2013. It seems like a long time ago. But really focusing that forward, and that's allowed our preschool program to grow, and our outcomes are consistent across every single channel of our preschool program.
Deja.
And then speaking of those other services outside of direct instruction to students, there was some disagreement from SCS about how many students Port Orleans served, placing that closer to around 1,600. But as you mentioned a number earlier of 3,200. What was the cause for that disconnect?
Sure. So can easily break that number down. The Head Start contract is for 3,200 children. We serve, Port Orleans has served, 1,520 children that are center-based. So we're providing the in-person service in our schools as well as those wraparound services for families. The balance of that contract, the children are served in an SCS school. However, Port Orleans was contracted to do the wraparound. So there was the disconnect on those two numbers. We call it full service, if you will, for those 1,520 children, and then wraparound only for those 1,680 children. So those 1,680, SCS is providing the direct instruction to children as part of this contract. Additionally, and kind of going back to that budget number, a little bit of the disconnect there on numbers, we also provide services for doing math in my head, 720 children through VPK and Fund 1. So that number's sometimes in this budget. Eric mentioned the tit for tat. That's some of the disconnect there. Fund 1 and VPK is included sometimes it's not.
With about 5 minutes left, what you mentioned Books from Birth, you mentioned other programs. Walk through again. We're very close to this, but for people who Port Orleans got in the news with this pre-K contract and so on, the Head Start contract, I should say. But the other services outside of that include
Sure.
what?
So preschool is just one of our 6 programs in 2 initiatives. So do a great amount of work outside of the space. So we have Generations, which is composed of AmeriCorps members that provide individual enrichment activities for students who may be a little bit behind on incoming assessments to help them keep pace with peers through the end of the school year. So it's really that stacked services component on top of our preschool, making an impact there. Generations also has foster grandparents, a remarkable set of individuals. They each spend 1,000 hours of service a year in our centers to children, being that extra set of eyes, ears, and hands in the classroom. Books from Birth, we're the largest affiliate in the world of Dolly Parton's Imagination Library. So we serve over 40,000 children, mail over 40,000 children books, or 40,000 children in Shelby County an age-appropriate book every single month. On top of that, we also provide home visitation services through our Cornerstone work for pregnant and parenting families, really influencing that healthy birth weight disparity that's been in the news for a long time and starting to thankfully come back down in Shelby County. A number of other pieces going forward as well, but we're able to really layer all those programs together to enhance early childhood quality.
I'm curious, this seems like a needle in a haystack, and the haystack that you all try to conquer and go through. That was a really bad mixed analogy, but I'll stick with it. Transportation. And the notion of building now, how many facilities? And I think that's a thing I hear constantly from nonprofits and community organizations is, we used to we build this great big facility and then everyone would come. But then this sort of realization, not everybody can get there.
Right.
People don't have transport. We don't have great public transport here. They may not have cars. They have jobs. So talk about the strategy of putting facilities out in more neighborhoods. And then do you do busing and transport in that way to get kids and families to these services?
So we do not do transportation for a couple of different reasons, but we do make sure that our centers are convenient for families. So for example, the new facilities that we built, we really have a couple of different criteria that we look at. One, can families get there? So we make sure that we're near a MATA bus stop. Our last 2 academies that we built are a shorter walk from here to the parking lot than from here to the parking lot. Very, very easily accessible for families. Additionally, it's right next door to a great next option for families. So near a great performing elementary school. If you look at Alton Elementary, it's right next door to our Early Childhood Academy in South Memphis. Our Fraser Early Childhood Academy that we just opened in March actually has 2 elementary schools next door and one maybe 2 or 3 blocks away. So making that continuum possible for families to get a great early childhood education, but then go K-5, K-6 somewhere else right down the road. So easy to get to, but convenient for families that may be working or have older or younger children.
With just a minute left, and I keep saying that Joris Ray, the superintendent of Shelby County Schools, and staff will be here in 2 weeks. They'll be here next week. I don't know why I keep saying 2 weeks, but it will be here next week to talk about some of these issues and other things going on with SCS and so on, and the whole recovery from COVID and moving forward. 30 seconds or so, what does Porterleith look like in 10 years? I mean, you're 150, more than that, 170-year-old?
171.
171-year-old organization. This is a big change and shift, but again, all these other programs we've talked about. What is y'all's vision? Call it, 10 years from now.
10 years to continue our path forward. 10 years ago, we were a lot smaller, but we were able to really take some lessons learned over the last 10 years and apply them so that we can continue our preschool work in any fashion going forward. I think as that continues to play out, we'll definitely still be improving our outcomes so that more children are ready for kindergarten than they are today, and we'll still be here to serve the community.
All right. Rob Hughes, thanks for being here. Deja, thanks for joining us. And thank you for joining us. Again, join us next week. Thanks.